I'm Brian Moretta. I'm head of tax advantage research at Hardman Co. So I'm going to start with James Faulkner from Vala. I've known James for some time, and I have enjoyed many conversations with him. So I'm really looking forward to hearing him this time.
Great, thank you, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great to be involved with such an esteemed panel of speakers. So we're up to our 14th tranche, although we've only been around a few years. We're up to our 14th tranche, and but I still get really excited about making investments and getting investments completed for the investors, as well as seeing the progress within the portfolio. The ups and downs of venture investing are part and parcel of the venture sector. The disappointing stories, as well as the really exciting stories, are part of the game. But we're rewarded because we get involved in some great businesses with some great teams. We see the impact of those businesses within their sectors, the disruption they cause, and then we get rewarded with valuations heading in the right direction, which is great. I want to focus a little bit on these guys because although Arthur retired in the investment committee, it's the collective and collaborative experience of these guys that were really the inspiration and the basis for the strategy that we have at Vala. My job is to run the business, but it's these guys who have been making the decisions alongside as part of the investment committee into the business into which businesses we invest. But they themselves have got decades of experience of investing into these kinds of businesses, both conceptualizing them, building them, raising money for them, all the challenges and some of the failures that go with that, but also the tremendous successes that come with it. And you can see the reviews around their track record. But just to give you a bit of a picture, and I'll emphasize this is the track record of their track record as they come to build and make decisions on the Vala portfolio alongside Sapphire, the principal for the investment manager for the fund. And so this is their track record. And we identified there were 77 companies of a commensurate size with these investments. EIS type investments. They put 33 million of their own money. This is over several decades. 38 million was raised from co-investor. And of those 77, there's been 39 exits for good and for bad. But in aggregate, across all of those 39, of the 55 million that was put into those businesses, 167 million was returned to investors. And that's the kind of track record that Vala is based on. So not just one-off successes or even two-off successes, but many successes that lead to that kind of track record over about a 4.5 year period. So that's the basis of the team that we're seeing. Who is Vala? We did our first investments in March 2018. So we've invested in over 35 companies to date. We adopted what we now call a sustainability strategy. When we were first doing what we do, we didn't used to use that term, but we do now, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But it's about, as well as doing the right thing, it's also because we believe that sustainability is the right commercial approach for these businesses. And you might have noticed that Vala has adopted one of the FCA's new SDR labels, sustainability improvers. There's three things I'd like to get across in our couple of minutes together. First of all, that venture building sits at the heart of our strategy, and we'll talk a bit about that in the limited time we've got. That sustainability, a focus on sustainability, has been always important to us and remains a central plank of what we do. And then thirdly, just to get a bit about the mechanics of our portfolio and the key things that you would need to know in terms of recommending it to your clients. Sustainability, I've mentioned a couple of times. And of course, it is about doing the right thing, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. what we want our businesses to be doing is becoming more sustainable. And that's why it's called better, because we want them to become better. And that's important for the way that we live and work and operate in our lives. But we also think there's a commercial imperative. And we've made the capital through the Better Ventures contingent on those companies meaningfully and tangibly committing to becoming more sustainable. And we do that principally using a platform called Future Plus, and then we'll report on that basis. But we don't think it's, as I say, just about doing the right thing. We think there's a commercial imperative. We think by having a focus on sustainability, the outcomes will be stronger to the investors. And there's been some great examples over recent years when we saw the energy crisis and spike in energy prices. Companies that have spent time considering energy usage and how they use energy, but where they get how they source their energy, will be in a better position to weather those kind of storms. We saw that a couple of years after COVID, when there was a supply chain crunch. Similarly, companies that have spent time considering their supply chain, thinking about circularity, thinking about wastage, will be better positioned to accommodate those storms when they come. We think there's there's lots to unpack in this, but the adherence of employees into those businesses will be greater because they're not only bought into the commercial opportunity, but also the values of the business. And we think finally that exit values will also support this. Now, there's evidence that needs to come through for that, but we think acquirers and potential acquirers, Brian mentioned about acquisitions, potential acquirers will want to see the business have focused on this and can evidence it as well. So that's why sustainability is a key part of our investment thesis. So this is the Better Ventures EIS. There's the sustainability improvers label that we've added as well as part of the FCA's SDR regime. So you and your clients can have some assurance that we are committed to the process and will be reporting on that basis. And the mechanics are a minimum of 6 companies in each client's portfolio, no more than 20% committed to each individual company. And you can see the minimum there, 20,000. We'll come back to stage of investment at the moment. But the key date for this year is the 28th of March. So if you and your clients would like to be fully invested before the tax year end, then we need applications and subscriptions by the 28th of March. This slide is a little bit about diversification, which Brian's already mentioned. The idea that there's diversification in terms of the age of the businesses, that we invest both relatively early stage, but also across a number of sectors and themes. And there's sectors and themes that we're familiar with and that we can add some value into. And there's also some cross pollination of ideas and some alignment between those businesses. As well. You can see there that things are broadly or generally going pretty well. All of our, or to see that investors' portfolios are heading in the right direction, and that's the cumulative approach on measuring that success. But each individual's client's portfolio is going to look slightly different. But broadly speaking, it's great to see things heading in the right direction. Venture building, I've mentioned. The idea that we work with businesses from the very beginning. It's not exclusively the case, but it is predominantly the case within our portfolios that we'll work with founders who've got a great idea. We'll support them with early stage capital, and then the funds can get involved as those businesses mature. And here's 4 examples of businesses that have been venture built, and I'd love the opportunity to talk to you more about those 4 and many others in the portfolio of how we supported the founders from early stage. We supported them in terms of physical space, in terms of personnel, finance, accounting, all of those things that are useful, but really to support them in building their businesses. And we make a commitment that if things are heading in the right direction, we will continue to support them in their funding. And so there are particular examples of companies heading in the right direction. Fees are important to you, important to your client. We believe that this is a fair balance. We take an initial fee on behalf of the investors, or the fund takes an initial fee on behalf of the investors through the portfolio companies. Your clients will have 96.4% of their initial investment after any advisor fees invested into the portfolio companies, because we hold back the first 2 years worth of AMC prior to deployment. We think that's a fair balance. We only will take AMCs for the first 5 years. After that, there won't be an AMC taken. The idea really is that those companies should be exiting. So again, we think that's fair. And we take a performance fee at portfolio level. So only when we've got 10% growth back for the investor are we going to start taking some profit share as well. So I think that's broadly about it for me. Those are the things, the mechanics that you're there. So the three things were about our commitment to sustainability and why we think it's important. Secondly, the importance of venture building, of being with founders from the very beginning, and then the mechanics of the investment portfolio. So I hope that makes sense.
That's great. Thank you for that, James. You mentioned a lot about the sustainability and the fact that you guys have adopted one of the FCA SDR labels, which came into play as of late last year. Why did you think that was so important for you to do that? Because looking across the kind of the spectrum of funds out there, a lot of funds talked around ESG over the last X years, but not many have adopted labels, and we've almost gone from this kind of perceived greenwashing to a green hushing phase. So keen to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we as a group that were committed to sustainability, we always found it somewhat egregious when others were talking about ESG without any discernible way of understanding how that applied, or whether it was just greenwashing. So the SDR thing was not a difficult decision for us, because it's things that we were doing anyway. We used, I mentioned Future Plus. About 80% of our portfolio use Future Plus. So we've been able to report to our clients on the progress, both at a fund level and individual company level, towards becoming more sustainable with our companies for the last couple of years. So it was a relatively easy decision. And because we do talk about sustainability, there is an obligation on us to either adopt it or change our language. So we welcome it from the FCA, because I think it will remind people about greenwashing. But as I say, for us, it's about doing the right thing. That's why it's really, really important. But we think there's a commercial imperative, and we hope to see, we already think we're seeing it in our portfolio already, but the evidence will be there that it's a commercial benefit by focusing on these things. So yeah, that was about it.
One question in: who values the valuations of the portfolio holdings, and how do you do that?
I'm sure this will be a common question for all of the team, and we are obliged to follow BVCA guidelines on valuation. So try and assess a fair value. We revalue formally every 6 months within our portfolio. The easiest way to do it is if the company has had a recent funding round, particularly where there's third parties involved. Ultimately, the value of the business is what somebody's willing to invest in at. So having had a recent funding round is the easiest way to assess the value of a company. In the absence of that, then we have to take a view on the progress of the business, in particular its journey towards revenues, maybe less so profitability in the early stage investing, but how are they doing towards their target. So generally speaking, it's an internal process for valuations. We like to see third-party validation through investment. Then that's nice and easy and nice and clear, but we'll go through a third party. If there is sufficient data, then adding models, discounted cash flow models, that kind of thing is an additional tool for that. But that's how generally we do it.
Great. Another question in. I'll keep this anonymous. The recent vintages have not performed well. Is that to be expected, or is it exceptional?
Well, thank you for spotting that. Well spotted, whoever that was. That's well done. Yeah, I think so. I mean, nobody, everybody wants to see portfolios in the green rather than in the red. But yeah, a couple of companies early in their life have fallen over. It always hurts a lot. We seem to spend an awful lot of time and energy on those companies, and some survive and some make it through, and some don't. So yeah, it's a bit of a cliche of the lemons ripening before the melons, but it does seem to have been the case over the last couple of years. I think challenging economic decisions have been part of that, but not exclusively. So we have seen some companies some companies in the portfolios fall over. We are pretty confident that there's some really exciting ones in there that will build towards success. So we've got really patient investors, but we're hopefully seeing them heading in the right direction. Perhaps Brian's got something to add on that. I don't know.
I probably do have something to add on that very briefly. I think, yeah, I'll second James's comment that, you know, in venture capital, what you generally see the failures before the successes, and that's just the sad truth. And that's actually to be welcomed, because the last thing you want is managers pumping money after companies that are failing just to pretend they haven't failed. I think the other thing I might add is that venture capital valuations peaked in 2022. We've had a couple of years of a down cycle. There's a lot of debate about whether we're at, near, or past the bottom. But I think I think general consensus is we're probably past the worst on that. So we would hope for a general market improvement from here. You know, I think we've had a very tough couple of years in the venture market. But I'd like to thank James. Thank you very much to everybody for attending and staying to the end. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully on another webinar soon. Thank you very much.